Hi, my name's Karen O'Connor, and welcome to this episode of the Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood podcast. Thanks for tuning in. So, Marc, I'd just introduce yourself a little bit and tell me about what you do. Yeah.
All right. Well, my name is Marc, and I work for an organization called Interventional Rescue. And as you can hear, South African accent, so ahead of time, I'll apologize. Although I live in Australia, I've got a fantastic, beautiful Australian wife and family. I'm originally from South Africa, and I think I'm left with this accent for life. And anyway, I'm involved in an organization called Interventional Rescue, which got started out of Australia 18 years ago. We're coming up to our 19th birthday in October. And so what we do as an organization, we operate in 7 different countries across the globe, mostly concentrated in Southeast Asia. And what we do is we go undercover into brothels, bars, and the dingy dark holes and places people would never dream to go into. And we'll go and look for children that have been trafficked into the sex industry. And then once we find these children, we rescue them out of that hellhole that we find them in, and then we put them onto what we call a pathway to freedom. So we'll take them to our rescue centers, and from that point, we'll assess them. And obviously, they'll get medical help, trauma counsel, and then we also, then the pathway branches out to whether we see whether it's best with family reunification. We'll go and see whether we send our social workers out to go and see whether parents implicit in or directly involved in them being trafficked, or were the parents totally innocent in the process, and so therefore is it safer to get them back reintegrated with their family as soon as possible. According to the World Health Organization, they feel it's they've worked out it is actually the best for long-term health for a child if you can get them reunified with their parents if it is a safe environment that they're found in. And then we've also got transitional homes we put them through, and or residential homes if it's just not safe to go home. And we'll look after them further through our rescue centers. But through the whole process, we always look after them and we set them through on this pathway of freedom. We will help them with education, vocational training, etc. So that gives you a little synopsis.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. So in terms of children ending up in trafficking, what's the percentage of those children where it's something to do with their parents? How many of those kids that you rescued go back into their families?
Oh, it's changing, but for us, it's I would say roughly a good 50% can actually end up going back to the parents, but it might be in a stage setting. It depends on how long it takes us to reconnect with, some of them live in villages that are quite a bit removed. Like when I was in Cambodia, we had one of our social workers took 3 days to travel to get to the village they were in. And then we'll first have to assess if it is safe for them to go back. And then they still go through a process where we look after their physical and needs, and also their emotional needs. And then, like I said, quite a few of them might go through a 6-month period where they go through our actual rescue center. So it takes a bit of time before we actually, if we think it's safe and they've gone through the 6-month period and it looks like they're ready to go home, then we can actually get them home and then still work through that. So it all depends on the individual case. Every child is individual. Every case is individual. We don't have just a cookie cutter thing that, all right, one size fits all, because it doesn't. And every child got there through different ways. So we do a very individualized pathway to freedom, if we can put it that way. And so some of the children, it's better that they stay with us, and some of them will stay because we've been growing and getting out there into different places, and finances is a big thing. Because we're 100% not for profit, finances is what determines how much we can do. So we've learned over time. We partnered with real good other NGOs that might actually assist the specific child in their journey. Point in case is in Cambodia, we've got a wonderful patisserie that once we've rescued the children, we give them different options, and they're in our rescue center. And we give them different options there of which pathway they want to go. And so, like, for example, in this patisserie, they'll take the girls, our girls that want to go down that track, and actually take them in for 2 years and train them up to become fully fledged patisserie chefs. On the video, your viewers can't see, but I'm actually a bit of a big boy, and this specific patisserie in Phnom Penh, I mean, their produce is just absolutely fantastic. And I can't help myself when they make these fantastic cupcakes and different things, and I was truly enjoying myself there. And they actually came either second or third in international patisserie competition. This is how good quality they are. So the girls get trained up, and once they finish, they can either stay at this patisserie and work full time, or what they've also seen is in the past and even now is that other restaurants have actually got a demand for these girls to come and work for them because they train so well. So this is just, I'm just giving you one of many examples of different directions they can go into. And if I start kind of in the beginning part of the journey, so like I said, we've got full time in all these countries, and I'll just maybe rattle off a few for you. We're in Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines. We're in the Dominican Republic, so that's one of the countries outside of Southeast Asia, and then we've got a few countries that we call undisclosed nations that we just can't mention because of political sensitive reasons. The countries aren't too happy for us even focusing on that. There is a problem with children being trafficked in the sex industry. So, and those I unfortunately can't mention, but we've got then a few out there that the same thing, that we operate fully in. And if you look in the numbers are sometimes, you were talking numbers earlier. The numbers are sometimes very difficult because this is a hidden illegal industry. It's very difficult to even for governments to get their head around what are the actual numbers out there. But the World Labour Organization in 2016 did a real concerted effort to try and find out how many people are in slavery. And in 2016, they estimated that about 40 million people were in some form of slavery. Now, when we think slavery, a lot of times, the first thing that for me, and I'm sure a lot of people comes to mind, you think of the 17 and 1800s when people from out of Africa were taken and forcibly taken to America and to England and to the rest of the Western world to go and work as slaves. And in those days, it was a bit of a rich man's game in the sense of that the average cost of a slave was about between $30,000 and $40,000. And where today you can buy another individual for $90. So this is why it's actually enlarged the amount of people that have been enslaved. The World Labour Organization also guesstimated that over a 5-year period, there was about 89 million people that had experienced some form of slavery. So if you think of it from an Australian perspective, and even in America, it's more than half the population. If you think of just the US alone, more than half of the population is enslaved. So the numbers are huge, and the more we talk about it, the more people actually get their heads around that this is a modern day problem. I never thought I would be living in a society where another human being is totally seen as purely as a commodity. There's zero value on their life. They're seen as a commodity. And these children, back to the World Labour Organization, 2016 guesstimated that about 1 million children were caught up in sex trafficking alone. And so sex trafficking, the whole sex trafficking industry, they guesstimate is about a 90 to $99 billion industry. So it's a huge financial gain for a lot of these guys. And what we saw, so, to go back, is how we all started this journey. Our guys go undercover. They go into brothels, bars, karaoke bars, you name it, and some real dingy places, dark holes. And they'll look for children and so to be rescued. And so we've got like 4 forms, which firstly is covert rescue. So covert rescue is where we go individually into into these bars and brothels, and we always go as a group, and we go and act as if we're sex tourists. We enter in there undercover, and we look for children that have been trafficked, and then once we find them, we befriend them, and we set them up for rescue, and we rescue them out of there, and then we take them to our rescue centers. And I'll give you an example. For example, if I may. One of my favorite ones is, when I say favorite, is one I tell a lot purely because it shows the plight of a lot of these girls as an example. Now, any names, if I can just say ahead of time, any names that I use are fake names. We do not use the real names of our girls. We fiercely protect the identity of all our children that we rescue. And, I'll use a lot of times I'll say girls because but in the 90 percentile is basically of children we rescue are girls. And just to digress, somebody asked me, why is it that we as a Western group, if you want to put it that way, is involved in Southeast Asia and all of these countries? And I just tell them purely it's because we as Westerners created this problem. We go to these bars, the karaoke bars, and all these different places. It's people flying in from all over the world, Westerners predominantly. They're flying from all over the world. So we created the demand, and so supply and demand, pure economics. So I feel we have to we've got to help to be part of the solution as well. And anyway, so going back to our cover rescues, we go undercover. And we rescue the children one at a time, basically out of the place we find them. And I'll use the example Cassie, like I said before, not a real name. So Cassie was a 14-year-old girl, part of a 7-strong family, and the family were farmers in a rural area in Thailand. The parents started struggling a bit, and they, at the age of 14, they asked Cassie, can you please see if you can just find a job just to help the family? And things were getting really a bit tough for them. And so she couldn't really find a job in the town she was in. And so she just asked a friend, where do you think I can find a job? And she said, why don't you just go to the big city? Why don't you just go there and see if you can find a job there? And so naively, she thought, great. So she hitched a lift on the back of a truck, or in Australian vernacular, a ute, and traveled up to the city, and they 3 hours trip, and they dropped her off at a bus stop, what they call a bus stop, but it's basically a drop-off area, and then there's like an oval shaped around it is all these bars. And these bars, when I say bars, they're basically brothels. And so what happened is a mama-san, which is a female manager, walked out of the bar, walked up to her and said, hey, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm just naively, she just said, oh, I'm looking for a job. So she said, oh, great, you're looking for a job? I've got a job for you at my bar. And all you have to do is just talk to customers. That's all it's about. And just be friendly. And naively, at 14 years old, she's a virgin, got no idea what's about to happen to her. They get her inside, and then they said, oh, well, can you just sit in this room? And we've got some clothes we just want you to put on. It's part of the uniform. And obviously, the clothes that they're asking her to wear is just this skimpy type of outfit. And so Cassie goes into this room, and unfortunately for her, I've got to warn people now a bit. There's some sensitive stuff's going to come up. But and what I'm about to describe to you, this happened to her 5 times. What happened is the door opened, and 4 guys walked in, and they gang raped her to break her in. And here's a girl that had never crossed her mind ever that she would be caught in such a situation in her life. These 4 strangers come in and start gang raping her, and she's fighting them back, and they beat her up and basically just kept and gang raped her for hours on end. But here's here's the thing that really affects me even when I think every time about it. It's just that at her most vulnerable moment, at the most traumatic moment in her life, these guys videotaped the whole incident and then sold it on the dark web as pornographic material. So in the moment of her utmost emotional, distraught, despair, physical violence against her, that is spread and sold and is watched all over the world. And unfortunately, this happened to her 5 times after that. And so when we got our undercover workers went into this bar, and they saw Cassie, and at that stage Cassie was a broken 14-year-old, and you could see fear in her eyes, and our guys gently invited her to come over and just sat with her, acted like they're, our cover is that we're there as a sex tourists. So without blowing the cover, they sat there talking to her, and then quietly, quietly over time, because sometimes we've got to visit them 2 or 3 times, because at the beginning they just think we're just another dirty John. So there's no, but after a while they realize there's something different about us. We're not booking them out for sex. We're just kind of chatting to them. And so anyway, long story short is we offered her a rescue to her, to be rescued. And we explained who we were and said, "Do you want to be rescued?" And she said yes. And we booked her out as if we were going to go and take her to a hotel and abuse her. And she hopped on the back of one of our guys' bikes and just rode off with her to our rescue center. And what we do a lot of times is we'll actually notify the other girls in the rescue center. And then what happened is these girls came out when we arrived with her, and came out to greet Cassie. And Cassie was just, her reaction was just utter sheer joy and happiness. And we've seen different emotions, but this was like nearly over the top emotions. And so what happens to a lot of these girls is we showed her where she could sleep, and this happens to so many of our girls. They'll sleep for 2 days without it, just sleep and sleep and sleep, because for the first time they've got a safe place where they can be in a bed, that's a safe place where they can actually just close their eyes and sleep. They don't have to worry about those footsteps coming down the hall. Is that another abuser that's going to force themselves on me? And so anyway, we allowed her to sleep, and then we just asked her, your reaction was, we understand you were happy, but and then she just said, well, when you guys said what you do, I actually wasn't sure if that was the truth, because you've got to think, this girl has been lied to so many times over and over. But it was so bad for her that she said, in myself, I just decided, I'm just going to take a chance. I'm going to take a chance. These guys might just be telling me some more lies, but I'm just going to take a chance. And so when she saw the other girls welcoming her and realizing this was the truth, it was just sheer relief and joy that poured out of her. And so this is an example of a lot of the girls we find and how they get themselves in these positions. And this is part of my own story, is that I had the privilege, when I started in the beginning talking, our organization got started by a phenomenal man called Tony Kerwin, who, like we said, over 18 years ago. And how the genesis of our organization was that he was sitting in a bar in Thailand, and he overheard this one gentleman just at the bar bragging that he had got offered a child to have sex with. And that really affected him. And him being a dad with daughters himself, he started looking into it and realizing this is a big growing problem, is trafficking of children in the sex industry. And that was how our organization got started. And so, like I said, I had the privilege to go undercover in Cambodia and Thailand, and in Thailand specifically with Tony Kerwin. In Cambodia was with our other permanent undercover guys. But in Thailand, had the privilege to go with Tony and the head of our undercover, internationally, our undercover work, just call him Damo. We use different names for him. And anyway, to go in undercover, and we were, and on this trip also, our CEO, Fiona Burke, and a phenomenal lady, was also involved and also came along. And she also, and so anyway, we were in this well-known street called Walking Street, which is like a tourists even walk through, but you've got all these bars on all along the sides, and they basically, they're bars, but it's all, they basically prostitution. And anyway, we're in this undercover in this bar, and I sat next to this girl and this young girl. And I started just talking, and I just, I just felt, the music's blaring and things are happening, but I just quietly asked her, tell me, how did you get here? And, and usually they won't really say much, but she just felt she could trust me and talk to me. And and I'll call her, I've given her a nickname called Sugi, but that's not her real name. And I just said, Sugi, how did you get here? And she kind of quietly, quietly told me, that 4 months before me sitting there next to her, she was a happy child with at school with a 10-year-old sister, younger sister that's in school with her, and her parents are both working, life's good. Suddenly her dad, unfortunately, passes away. And very quickly she could see that her mum was struggling financially. because now it's just a one income, and she's trying to look after the girls. They go to school, and out of the goodness of her own heart, she decided, all right, Mom, how about I go to the big city and I'll find a job there, just, as waitressing or any type of job, just to help alleviate the financial stress. And that way, my sister my 10-year-old sister, younger sister, can stay in school. And once we kind of got it sorted, I'll come back and go back to school. And so here she goes to the city, naive girl, and unfortunately the wrong guys get hold of her, and they force her into industry, selling her little body to dirty johns that fly in from all over the world to come in and abuse these children. And I'm hearing a story, and I'm just, inside of you, and this is what this is what happens to all of us. It's always about that one child, and so you've got to have your emotions checked. And sitting next to Sugi, and I thought I'll just push a little bit further. And I just felt to ask her. I said, Sugi, if you were able to stay in school, what was your dream? What is it that you wanted to do? Because we all got dreams, and we've all got things that we want to do. And for me, the heartbreaking thing over, this horrible situation she's in and where she finds herself. But for me, what even more heartbreaking is, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Karen, but when somebody's telling you a dream that they had, but you can see in their eyes and their body language that they believe that dream is forever gone, that dream has been shattered into a million pieces. And so when I asked what is it that she wanted to do, she had her whole body language was already down, but it even dropped further, and she just kind of just said, oh, well, my dream was to become a school teacher. So here's a girl that wanted to be an educator of the next generation. Out of the goodness of her heart to help her family, she went to find just a normal job, and she got railroaded into selling her little body to dirty johns flying in from all over the world. And that's part of my motivation, why I love being part of this phenomenal organization in Destiny Rescue. And every person in Destiny Rescue have got their own story, have been touched by an individual child that have come across their path. And for me is, how many Sugis are out there that need our intervention and our help? And I've explained it, if you want, I use it in Australian context, and I know you've got some international viewers and listeners as well. But in Australian context, we've got an organization here called Surf Life Saving. So they've got points on the beaches which they patrol, and if you get in trouble, they'll rescue you out of the water. But we've got the national arm, and the national arm does a brilliant job. And there's also a lot of organizations. And this is me giving you the example of what's different from us than from so many other organizations that do brilliant jobs out there. But like, you get the national arm, and they do a fantastic job. They advertise and on TV, and even in airports, when you come, they'll go swim between the flags. We've got these flags set up, swim between the flags. Watch out for the rips. They warn people. It's all about education, trying to protect people that they don't get themselves in trouble in our ocean, in our beautiful beaches. In which that is all very important, and that's so needed. But Karen, on the day, if you're in the waters and you're drowning, you want a lifeguard there with you in those waters. And that's us as Destiny Rescue. We go into the dark and dingy places where they cannot put their hands up and say, here, rescue me. But we'll find them and we'll rescue them out of those dark waters. And that's the biggest difference between us and a lot of organizations out there. And I saw a thing pop up. What happens to our, like I said, once we rescue them, they go to our rescue centers, they get assessed. And so we give them counseling. We give them physical help, because some of these girls, the ones that have been raped and so forth, they'll have venereal diseases and everything. So we do a whole bunch of checks on their physical health and give them physical health, as well as trauma counsel and different forms of counsel to help them with the psychological ramifications. And every child is different. Every person is different. I'm different than you. I process trauma differently than you. And so it's not one size fits all. Again, there's different ways. We'll use art therapy, a whole bunch of different ways of helping them work through this. But part of our focus for them is to focus on the fact that this horrible thing that's happened to you, that should not define who you are. And that's why we, as Destiny Rescue, we always put them on a path where they can choose their own destiny. We give them the tools and the help to be able to do that. You know, case in point is what we had in, for example, Cambodia. We've got in our rescue center there, we've got a in-house basically vocational training, which if the girls choose, they can go on to that, and that's like that's up to a 2-year program, and that's in beauty therapy. And so when us and running their own beauty salon, and so when I say beauty salon, it might mean different things for different people, but in that context, it is basically hairdressing, it is manicures and pedicures, and it's makeup and so forth. For me as a bloke, I don't know too much about it, but it's when I was in Cambodia, they painted my nails this vibrant purple color, and then had all the things to take it off, and I was walking for 2 days around with this vibrant colors. But anyway, that was their form of having fun with me. But but yeah, so we train them up to do that, and you know, we've got so many examples of it. But one of the examples was these 2 sisters, and it's a very unique situation to actually rescue 2 sisters at the same place. A lot of times they get split up into different places, but the 2 sisters were together. We rescued them out of the horrible place they found themselves into, and rescued them out, and they went through this program. And when they graduated and finished, and it was safe for them to go back to their village, we actually helped them set up. We gave them all the tools, all the equipment, everything to start up their own little salon there. And they went back to their village and they started up their salon. And obviously, you've got to think on third world terms. So it was kind of, it's like this wooden shack with a sail, like this canvas thing right in front of it that drops down when they're not there. But that little shack became the main point for anybody in the village to go and do their hair and makeup and everything. And these girls flourished, and they did so well that they not only looked after themselves, but they were able to help their family as well, look after their whole family. So it's like I said, there's so many different avenues we put them through. I'll jump back maybe to other examples of that, but I wanted to just finish, with the different forms of rescue we've got. So we've got the COVID, then we've got the raid rescues. Raid rescues is where our undercover guys go in and they get build basically a case, and they'll actually get information together to build a case. And then when we've got enough information together and we've got this case ready to go, what happens is that we'll organize a raid with either local or federal authorities in these different countries. And so, and you get certain specialist police units that deal with trafficking in these countries, but they'll work with us hand in hand. And what happens is we'll set up a raid, we'll get all the information, and the police will come with us involved. We'll raid the whole place, shut the whole place down, and the managers and the owners of that go to jail, and everybody that's been trafficked in that institute gets set free. So, and part of that is we've had a kind of a variant happen through, started with COVID and everything. It's amazing how these criminal elements will adapt and go online very quickly. And so we started going into cyber rescue, and we had our first cyber rescue. We rescued a 2-year-old boy. And what happened is that the police in England raided a suspected pedophile's house. They found on his phone this pornographic material of adult abusing a 2-year-old boy. And what this was actually the stepdad of this boy was abusing this child, kind of like nearly on demand, and selling this material online on the dark web. And so the police there in England worked out it was they believed it was in the Philippines. And so they got hold of the National Bureau of Investigation in the Philippines, who in turn then got hold of us, and all 3 agencies worked together on this. And so we got into the dark website that was being used and started communicating with this stepdad, and then basically set up a sting where, I won't go into too much detail not to give too much away, but we set up a sting where at a hotel, and we ahead of time had cleared the hotel lobby, got their permission to be there, cleared the hotel lobby, and it was our agents, Destiny Rescue's agents, it was the National Bureau of Investigations agents, and also English Federal Police that were there on site, you know, acting like they're milling around, just normal patrons of. And we were waiting for this gentleman, and he came in and spoke to the undercover Destiny Rescue agent, and brought his 2-year-old boy, and basically got money from us to go and have sex with the child upstairs in the hotel room, and handed us over this 2-year-old boy to go and supposedly have sex upstairs in a hotel room. And at that moment, as soon as he handed out the child, ourselves plus the NBI and the English police formed this human barrier between him and this child. And I'm happy to say the stepdad and the mother was implicit as well, got both put into taken to custody. And this 2-year-old boy is in safe hands and in safe environment and getting all the help he needs. So that just gives you another example of the different forms of raid rescues we've also got. And for us, unfortunately, we see the dark side of humanity. And so we've seen from like I said, 2-year-olds, every single age. We've rescued every single age right up to past 20. And children are a focus, but you know, it's just like using the same analogy to somebody's drowning in the ocean. But if we come across trafficked individuals and they're not children anymore, we'll still rescue them, because it's not like you're in the ocean and somebody's drowning. Go, oh, excuse me, what's your age? Oh, sorry, too old. Sorry, bad luck. No, we'll rescue if they come across. Our focus are children, but if we come across adults that have been trafficked, we'll rescue them as well. And then we've got another form of a rescue is interventional rescue, and sometimes we'll also, what we do is also part of interventional rescue is like you intervene before something happens, and there's different ways we'll do that, but we'll have, even part of it is education. Is if we see that a lot of people are being trafficked from a certain area, we'll actually send our community workers and actually go and educate the community about the dangers of trafficking. And so in the interventional, but there's also other forms of interventional, is when people, because we've got our agents in different places, if we see that there's somebody that's at risk to be trafficked, we'll actually intervene ahead of time into it. And in India, with interventional trafficking, there's different forms, but one example is there's temple prostitution in one of the nations, and what they do is it's illegal, but the local authorities turn the blind eye to it, and what they'll do is they'll force children into becoming temple prostitutes, and it's as a form of worship. People will go and pay and sleep with the temple prostitutes, and so some of these places you'll find that the businessmen will want to be the first ones to be able to go and sleep with this child, and they see it as a, you know, so they'll pay extra money to be the first one to basically break this child into it. And so we've had cases where family members would come to us and they'll actually ask us if we could intervene, because their family's being targeted by the community to push their child into temple prostitution. So those are one of the forms of interventional rescue that we do. And then another one is border rescues. We've got a nation, we were rescuing so many children in one nation that we set up border posts with the government of this nation to stop them before they get trafficked across the border. And so what this government, and I'm just using basic terms because I don't want to give away which part of the world it is in, but they allow us to actually have our staff will be permanently on these different borders, posted at these different borders, and they've given us actually office space in their border stations, and they've given us the authority to actually walk through buses and through taxis, and if we see anything sus, we'll actually ask these people to remove out off the bus, out of the taxi, out of the car, and we'll go and interview them separately.
So what do you think? How can you tell when something's suspect? What are you looking for?
And it's ladies we use. Our staff are all female. They've been trained up. They know what to look for. Right. There's some clear telltale signs. once again, I'm not going to divulge all our little secrets, but they've got ways of knowing. And we're that successful that we stop children and even adults being trafficked. It will be minimum one a day, every day, that we stop being trafficked across the border. And so what happens, I'll give you an example. With this one girl, she's one of the examples that's over 18. She was actually 21 years old. Her and her dad were on a bus traveling, and he was traveling for work, and she just wanted to travel with her dad. So she traveled with her dad on this bus, and they met this guy who was a businessman, and he just was very interested in the daughter and told the dad, listen, if she wants, I just live across the border in a neighboring country, and I'm a businessman. I own lots of businesses. How about she comes and works for me? And he was telling these fantastic figures, and the dad and the daughter both thought, man, their prayers have been answered. They've got this fantastic opportunity coming. And so this businessman said, here's my business card. Call me. Go and organize your passports. Go and organize your passports. Let us know, and we'll organize your visas and everything. But yeah, just let us know. So they went, as soon as they got home, organized their passports for her, then contacted this gentleman, and he sent supposedly a lady who was working for him, but and she went and came and got the passport and said, okay, she'll organize the paperwork and pay for the visa, sorry, and pay for it all to bring her across. And so she was on a bus about to just cross the border, and on the other side of the border was one of the most notorious cities where people disappear forever in the trafficking industry. And she was just about to cross when one of our ladies saw her and just thought, no, something just doesn't look right here, and asked her to come off the bus. She was told by this businessman to lie about why she's going there, and that should have been a red flag. But so she finally said, no, he's offered me a job, blah 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 blah, told the story. And we started explaining to her that that's a trap. You're about to be trafficked across. As soon as you go over the border, they'll get their hands on you, you'll disappear. And and we started giving her examples. And anyway, we contacted her dad, and he was so relieved that we just stopped her from disappearing out of their lives forever. And they actually opened a case against this gentleman, and he got hold of their number, tried to bribe them to drop the case and different things, but he then disappeared in the woodworks. So sorry, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. And then so what happened is we stayed in contact with her. She went back to her family. We educated the family about the dangers, and that you just can't trust anybody, basically. But anyway, we found out, we actually helped her to find going to a training organization and she trained up to be a police officer. So she's a police officer now in that city, and helping others, and helping others and protecting her local community and protecting other girls from being trafficked across the border. So that's and that's our border rescues. And we actually found another hotspot on that border where we want to actually start a new work and actually stop people being trafficked across that specific point. So as you can see, there's so many areas that we're involved with. We're trying to find these children and rescue them. We officially started counting in 2011, and since then we've rescued over 5,300 individuals. And took their lives out of being a sheer hell and put them into a position where they could choose their own destiny and go after their own dreams. And so if I may, we've got so many examples of children that we've allowed them to pick their own destiny, hence Destiny Rescue. And if you don't mind, I'll just give you two examples. But there's so many. But one of the examples was we had this girl, and she was actually in our Cambodia rescue center, and our social workers were seeing that she wasn't really interested in any of the programs, that she was not taking to anything. But that's all in her own private time. She was there and she was doing drawings just on a piece of paper, and they saw they realized that was the key for her. That was where her passion was art. So we as Destiny Rescue actually enrolled her into art school in Cambodia, and this was in Phnom Penh, and this art school was like in the Japanese style of art, and she really excelled, worked hard, excelled in it. And once she graduated out of that art school, we then, as Destiny Rescue, we found out there was an international a movie studio that was coming and actually and starting to looking to want to start up a digital animation studio in Cambodia. And so what happened is we got her an interview, and they interviewed for just a handful of interns, and she got accepted as an intern. And then they trained her up in-house, obviously. And then very happy to say that at the end of her intern period and her training period, they gave her a full-time position, and she obviously accepted it as a digital animator. So yes, and so we try to see which is the best places to go, and then we've got other girls that they're already old enough, they still teenagers, but they're old enough where they need work straight away. Sometimes we'll help families with even financial stipends, help to, if the child wants to go back to the family and it's safe and all that, we'll actually even help them financially for a year just to get themselves back on track and make sure these kids get hooked up either with education or other groups to help them with education. There's so many hundreds of ways. Like I said, we've got an individual pathway of freedom for every single child. And we work out what is the thing that really makes them tick and work for them. And then I might just finish off with one of my favorite examples. Probably now a couple of months ago, I was talking to the head of our, which I mentioned before, Damo, who I had the privilege to go undercover with. I spoke to him, and he was talking to a couple of us and asked the question, what's the one story that stands out for you? And I mean, he's literally seen hundreds and hundreds of and him being head of the international head of our undercover rescues, he said, well, what happened in the beginning days, what he had done is he had set up basically a barrier to protect the undercover guys as well as the girls that we rescue, that once we hand over, the undercover guys hands over the children to our social workers and et cetera at the rescue centers, there's no more contact between the two. So it's kind of to protect everybody's identities, et cetera. And so he said the problem, frustrating for him, was he was traveling from Thailand to one of our neighboring countries, and he traveled. He came in from northern Thailand into Bangkok, and the next morning early he had to fly out. So he stayed in a motel in the international airport district, which is mostly industrial area. And so he was staying at this motel, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. He was tired but couldn't sleep, and he was thirsty, and he remembered there was a 7-Eleven down the road. So he was just walking down the road, but he was kind of in a bad mood. He said, he was kicking stones, and he was whinging and moaning and complaining to himself and going, I know we make a difference, but are we really he was just having a real bad day, and he didn't want to fly. And he was just having a real bad day. And he's literally muttering to himself, what difference are we making an impact on this? What's the impact we have? I know we have, but because there's been this disconnect between him and what happens to the girls, he just, you kind of lose sometimes a little bit of perspective. And he's just complaining, walking down the street, and he sees the 7-Eleven lights, but he sees these two figures standing under the 7-Eleven glow of the sign, and can't make out who they are. But next minute, from those two figures, he just hears them yelling out his name, going, Damo, Damo. And he's like straining his eyes. The next minute, he sees these two figures running towards him, full tilt. And as they came basically upon him, then they just jumped on him, and he realized it was two girls that he had rescued 5 years before in northern Thailand, that he personally was involved with their rescue. And he's got these girls, and they're giving the biggest hug, and after they compose themselves and he's talking, and he's saying, what are you girls doing here? And they said, oh, didn't you know? They said, no, and they pointed in the direction, and they said, you see that hospital there? We work as nurses there. And he's like, and he said, tell me more. And they said, oh, well, after you dropped, after you rescued us and put us in the rescue center, the rest of Destiny Rescue, worked out which direction we wanted to go after helping us with everything else, and actually paid for us to go and study and become nurses. And so here he is, just at that moment, crisis point, going, oh, and just it's so solidified for him. What we do makes a difference. What we do with not only rescue them out of hell, which obviously makes a difference, but the long-term effect of the programs and everything we work with these individual pathways of freedom, that it makes a difference for these individuals. And the amazing thing about the story is that at that moment he realized there was a couple with these two girls, and they turned around as this couple kind of walked towards them, and they said, this is the guy we just spoke to you about. He's the guy. And so at that moment, talk about serendipity. At that moment, they are explaining to this couple how they found themselves in Bangkok, their story, which they were happily to tell their friends. And they're talking about this guy that rescued them. And here he walks up in 1 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's just amazing. But that was for him such a turning point in himself internally about, yes, we might not, him as a rescuer might not know each individual story, but there is a story for each one of these girls. And even the few boys that we've rescued, there is a story for each one of them. Each one's got a destiny. Each one's got a future. This is not the end of their journey, what's happened to them. And it's diabolical what's happened to them, but that's not the end of the journey. All of them have got a destiny, and that's why we call Destiny Rescue, to rescue them back into their destinies. And so, yeah, listen, I can talk underwater for hours about this, so I'm not sure how we're going with time. But yeah,
we got about 10 minutes left, I reckon.
10 minutes or
so there was a couple of questions asked. The first one was about and this is off topic a little bit, but how does this relate to the mainstream pornographic industry?
It definitely does. Pornography is you want to say, is the big elephant in the room. It's like, and we found even more so right now with COVID. People would think, COVID restrictions, that they would bring a respite for these kids, but no, it didn't. And a lot of these criminal elements move much quicker than what we do, and a lot of them jumped onto social media platforms and also basically. A thing that it's been a growing thing. It would be even abuse on demand. So they'll have through dark web will have people hook, line, and then they will kind of nearly like directors instruct how these guys should abuse these kids, and then they sell that as pornography. And there's some well-known pornographic sites out there. For not wanting to be sued, so I won't say any specific names, but just think of any of the big ones you can think of that they have. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, have been propagating some of these materials of these girls being raped, and they'll just and the people sell it and post it online. So unfortunately, the pornographic industry has definitely got a clear role to play in this. And the other thing we've got to also realize is that you'll get people that are, you'll get people that I spoke to a psychologist once, and he said part of the thing is that you'll get these, you'll have pedophiles that will watch pornographic material, and that will actually just make the thing inside of them grow bigger and bigger and need to be satisfied more and more, and that's why then they fly over to these countries and they go and live out these fantasies that were created through the pornographic material. So that line, we can be talking for hours about the effects, the cause and effects of pornography in this industry. So yes, it's definitely got a major role to play. And but we as Destiny Rescue, obviously, we're using all different means to stop this and put a halt to this and make an impact on this illegal industry. Good question.
So, before I go on to the last thing, I've got to apologize for the inappropriate giggle there. It was because Dawn Bates
I totally,
this.
I totally
posted this. So, so that was what I was giggling at. But the other thing I wanted to ask before we wrap up was Louise asked, would fundraising events and functions for your organization be helpful? I mean, yes.
Yes, definitely. Yes, Louise, definitely. And to go to back, we are 100% not-for-profit organization. We're a registered not-for-profit organization, and people get tax exemptions for what they give to us. We don't get funded by any governments, although we help a lot of government, federal police and agencies in different countries. We don't get any funding from any governments anywhere. So we're 100% reliant on wonderful donors and donations and fundraising events. So yes, please. That's the more, basically in terms of our setup is such that we can upscale so easily. The more money equals more rescues and more of it. Like I said, we've been doing this for 18 years. And so for me, and here's the thing, and I know I'm talking on behalf of all the other staff. My journey started actually as a donor. My wife and I were donors of Destiny Rescue. One of my best mates were one of the first ones to move his family to Thailand, and we got behind them and donated money. And that's how I started. That's how I got introduced to Destiny Rescue. And then one day I got the call wanting to know, Mark, do you want to do more? And I mean, they haven't even finished the question. I said, yes, sign me up, whatever it is. And then I just said, well, sorry, can I phone you back? I need to call my wife quickly. This is a bit of a big career change, but and can I say I'm still a donor? I still, out of my money, donate money to Destiny Rescue because I can see the actual effect, and it's purely finances that determine how much more we can rescue. And so yes, the answer to that question is yes. And a lot of times we, not to want to bring the down, but unfortunately, can I just share just one quick little story? It's a bit of a sad one, if that's all right. And I don't want to end with that, but just to kind of illustrate my point is why finances is such a crucial part in this journey of freedom for these kids. Is that we had set up a raid rescue, and we knew there were about 5 or so underage children, and unfortunately finances were, because finances go up and down, and there was a bit of a slowdown of finances, and our raid rescues cost quite a bit of money. Raid rescues cost on average about $10,000 because there's so much involved in getting it all together. And and some are higher, some are lower, but the average is about $10,000. And then there's also, for individual rescues, our cost is about $1,500. That doesn't include any aftercare or anything like that, just purely for the actual rescues. And so that's why fundraising projects and all of that is so immensely helpful to help us with this. But anyway, there was just a holdup of funds were coming through, but just a little bit slower. And so we had to postpone the raid by about a week, and for this specific raid. And so we finally, everything came through. We got everything we needed for the day, because on the day there's a lot of costs involved. We did the raid, but unfortunately, we realized there was one 12-year-old girl missing. And so we started looking for her, put the word out, and unfortunately for us, the little 12-year-old body was found ditched in an alleyway. 4 guys had booked her out the night or so before we got there, raped her and killed her, and just chucked her little body on the side of the road. So for us, believe me, from us, we know the actual effect of finances in our organization. So yes, please. My biggest thing is yes, please. Anybody that can help with donations. And we've got different forms. We've got rescue partners where people give monthly donations. That helps with cash flow. Then we've got people that will do fundraising events and therefore create a one-off or do a combination of it. Please talk to me. I would love to talk to you guys about it. If you don't mind, put my email address there as well, Karen, on it, so that people can get a hold of me.
What is it? Tell me what it is, Marc. It's Marc.
Yeah, I'll tell it right now. So it's Marc, M-A-R-C. Although South African, my mum liked the French name, so I got the French Marc. And so it's marc.nuss, that's N for November, U-S-S for Sam, at destinyrescue.org. So marc.nuss at destinyrescue.org. And please tell them to get hold of me. And also, if there are those that want to go onto our website, which is www.destinyrescue.org, if they can hop onto it, and if they want to, for example, just give straight away, there is a donate button. But can they please, just a pretty please, in their comments, there should be a comment section, please refer to your podcast. That'd be amazing. It'd be amazing to see where our donors come from, and it's come from this podcast. Because I'm always hoping that people listen to this and that it inspires people. I'm a great believer of action, and that's what drew me to of action in what we do. Is we can't just look at a problem and go, oh, this is a bad problem. So, but we've got to. What do we do? Does it motivate me to action, or do I just go, it's a problem? And that's what motivated my wife and I. I like organizations that get their hands dirty, that get in there and actually do. And that's what drew us to Destiny Rescue. You know, and hear my heart. I'm not trying to bag any other organization, but I like organizations that get right in the heart of it and deal with and get their hands real dirty, and that's their rescue. We'll go into places people would never dream going into, and we'll find those kids, and we'll rescue them out there.
I have to say that the big thing that I found really touching was the fact that the emotional strain it must put you guys under, going in there and rescuing those kids and keeping doing it, is phenomenal. So yeah, I just
like I said, each one of us, each one in this organization, whether it's from admin staff to the actual guys that go undercover to our social workers, we've all been touched directly with one of these lives. And for me, it was Sugi, but there's hundreds and of lives and thousands of lives that affected all of us. And then there's just stories, like I said, that one girl we missed, that we could have rescued her, that one girl. And even if you talk to our gentleman who's in charge of the Philippines operation, his own one story is when he rescued this one girl, 14-year-old girl, rescued her out of a hellhole. And she was so excited when she got rescued, and then she suddenly her face turned to the sternest, and she slapped them, and she said, "Where were you 4 months? Where were you 4 months ago when they pushed me into this? Where were you? Where were you?" And that drives him. It's those girls that we haven't found yet, the ones that we've not had the chance to get to, but we will get to them and rescue them. Anyway, I love this organization. So yes, please, if anybody can help us, that's it. Is money, and I've got a friend who's an accountant, and I spoke to him, and he gives money, he donates money actually on a monthly basis to Destiny Rescue. And I just asked him, I said, "Mate, I'm so happy, thanks for doing it, and we were having a chat." And he said, "Mark, you don't understand." He said, "I work in a job where I've got just figures and what people see as a very boring job." But he said, inside of me, I'm knowing at that moment while I'm sitting doing somebody's taxes, I'm also at the same time rescuing a child out of a hellhole that she would have not been able to do if it wasn't for somebody like me giving money to an organization like you. So that's what it is. It's a partnership. And so we would love to welcome anybody else to our family. Oops. I'm getting excited. I just kicked the table. I would join our family, become a part of the solution.
And the other thing is spread the word. For me,
absolutely.
I've had such a problem getting the word about this out there. It's been really difficult.
I know, because with social media organizations, they just you just mention the topic, they just boot you off without even looking at what you're doing. And I've had the same problem with my own Facebook. Battle ages just to get back onto it. But yes, spread the words. I would say for your listeners, spread this specific podcast, spread it out. Yes, we might have had technical difficulties in the beginning. Who cares? Just spread it out. Let people tell people, hey, in the beginning I get a battle, but just press through and listen to the rest of it. But that's another great way. Spread the word. Get it to your own. Yeah, share it. And definitely share the stream through your social media platforms, any which way you can. Email it to them, whatever. If it looks like it's not, if some social media network boots it off, just share the link through your email addresses. But that's another thing, is education. Share it through. Hopefully people will realize what a big problem this is, but there are solutions for it. And but I just want to once again, Karen, I want to thank you so much for honoring me, for having me on your wonderful podcast and also the stream. I really appreciate it. You do a phenomenal job, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity to talk about Destiny Rescue.
You are welcome. Least I could do, honestly. We've got to get the word out there. Yeah.
Oh, totally, definitely. But thanks for helping us getting the word out there.
Yeah. Deborah's up. We're going to finish up now because we've been talking for over an hour.
Yes.
But a couple of people who want to connect with you. So I've put Marc's email address in there. He is on Facebook. So if you go through my friend's profile, you'll find Marc there. You can connect through that as well. But please, everybody, just share this podcast, this live stream, whatever, just share it. And if we can all get in touch with one or two people, that's great. Because it seems to be all I've been able to get in touch with. It's not being shown to anybody. So yeah, we've got to actually do the work really old-fashioned manually. But Louise has just said we are converted. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. I've got to say, just as a closing thing from my point of view, and Dawn's quite right, I've shut up for long enough now. When Marc said to me, when the first time I went to the business group meeting, and Marc said, "Oh, podcaster, I need to talk to you." I'm like, this is for women. It's like menopause, marriage, and motherhood. And then he told me what he did, and I'm like, I'm so in. We need to talk. We've got to get the word of this out there because I've never heard of you. So grateful. Thank you.
No,
and
thank you so much,
everybody, for watching. And we can close it there. Thanks so much, Marc. Yeah, it was really good.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody listening as well. I really appreciate that you sat through it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood podcast. Come and join us in our new Facebook group, the Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood group, where we'll discuss what happened in this podcast and all the other things that have got to do with midlife. I'll see you there.